Well, for me, I started listening to it maybe 2 years ago, kind of around the time I graduated from an MFA program. And it was really just about, I was looking for content that kept my imagination fired.
Right.
Like everything I do is about keeping me inspired to keep going.
Sure. Yep.
Even the podcast. I want to hear creatives talk about their work. And there's just something about the ideas that are presented in every playlist you have. And by the way, the whole playlist, the way you deal with playlists, opened my eyes to their actual purpose. For the longest time, I didn't know what to do with YouTube playlists, but you have a great use of it. Uh, Trappist one playlist, a more playlist. My favorite is the Cosmology. Um, but regardless of where you go, there's inspiring content that just it's like having a drink with that buddy and you're just philosophizing, you know.
That's the ethic. That's what I intend. There's a few things that I intend with that channel that I've learned over the years from feedback. You read your comment section, and I read every single one on both channels, and you glean certain truths from that. And one of them is it's fun to sit around with a buddy and have a beer and talk about the universe. And this is a sort of a one-sided conversation version of that. The second thing is that people appreciate real, that it's real science, and then that's why I always cite papers and say where these ideas originate from. And the third thing is that about half of my audience just likes to fall asleep to the sound of my voice, and I'm happy to help. So they call it ASMR or, sleep aid, whatever. And it's very good for that because, laying in bed at night, trying to fall asleep to space content, on what I do with it, with a quiet voice and, all that sort of thing is very valuable because I imagine, being able to help people in that way, insomniacs and things like that to fall asleep. So that's about half of what my channels accomplish. And I'm rather proud of that. I put people to sleep with my channels and my books.
Yeah, and in a good way.
In a good way.
In a good way. And it reminds me of when I moved to New York in '03. I couldn't sleep, and I used to just imagine myself in like an Enterprise type ship with the hum, and I had to imagine the hum. Ooh,
Hmm.
and it's almost kind of like that, but the idea of visualizing stars outside just kind of made it peaceful enough to sleep. And I had to do that for a couple of years.
There are YouTube channels dedicated to 24/7 broadcasting the hum from the Enterprise. So this is something that does help people when you're in that sort of quasi-conscious state just before going to sleep. There are certain things that can just push you right over the edge. And for me, that was talk radio, late night talk radio back in the 90s. I would put on Art Bell or something like that and just fall asleep to it. And I'm sort of the modern YouTube equivalent of that sort of thing.